Alrighty, folks, welcome to day 8 of the one and only one rental at a time boot camp. We have done a lot these first 8 days. I will let you know right now, day 9 will be next Sunday. So about 8 days from today, again, 8 to 10 a.m. I want to go back and look at your spreadsheets. It's been about 8 weeks or so since we've done that. So I want to go back to your spreadsheets, check your daily discipline, talk about all the questions. Should you change markets? Should you not? Lots of stuff has been going on, I'm sure. So that will be next Sunday for day 9. But today's all about day 8. And this is out of area and out of state investing. It should be known. If you don't know, I definitely selected out of area. I tried to invest in my backyard. It simply didn't work. Ultimately choosing a market 2.5 hours away by car. Millennial Mike, why don't you tell your story of how you started and then you went out of state?
Yes, sir. Yes, I did. Well, first of all, if everybody's here, good morning. Excited to talk with you guys. Excited to be here. Zuber and I have been friends for a number of years. We just hit our 5-year anniversary of being friends. And I hit my 5-year. We did. And I know because I met Zuber the day after I closed on my first rental property. I posted a picture of me holding the key in a Graham Stephan Facebook page. And Zuber commented on it and said, "Hey, I want to interview you for my YouTube channel as a new investor." And I said, "I'm happy to do it." And that was how he and I met. And I just hit 5 years of owning this house hack. And now I'm sitting here with the opportunity to speak to you guys. So my story, like I said, started 5 years ago with a house hack in the Seattle area, which is a very expensive market. It was then, and it still is now, very expensive. And I got into this house hack, cut my living expenses down. But I very quickly started to realize that it was going to be tough for me to save up a 20% down payment for the next property. When you have $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 duplexes, 20% down is a lot of money. And so I originally grew up in the Midwest in North Dakota. It really is actually a state, not just a myth like most people think. And I was like, maybe I could invest back home where it makes a little more sense. So I started looking at areas in the Midwest. And that's where eventually I was turned on to by Mike. Actually, Mike introduced me to some Midwest investors and a turnkey property provider. And I started buying in Indiana, more specifically, Gary, Indiana, which I affectionately call the Gotham City of the Midwest. And former murder capital of the country, highest crime rate in the area. It's been dubbed America's most miserable city. And most people would say, why would you ever invest there? And don't get me wrong, I was extremely resistant to it at first, but after doing the research and studying the market and putting in the work that Mike teaches, I decided to just take a crack at it and bought a $60,000 house. And I've been, just off to the races ever since. I now have 15 rental units. I went from net worth of 0 to millionaire in under 5 years. And I now affectionately, jokingly call myself the King of Gary because I make random videos about the craziness and the things that happen there. And it's been a great ride.
Yeah. So I think out of area, out of state investing is the right answer for a lot of folks. I'm going to ask you, I mean, obviously I know I was involved in getting you out to Gary, Indiana, but did you consider, hey, going 90 minutes, going an hour, going 2 hours outside of Seattle? Did you do that before you started?
100%. Mike always talked about drawing circles. He said he looked in his area for a year. If you guys don't have, if you're in the course and you don't have the book, what's wrong? This thing's like
shame on you
or something. Come on. But Mike always talked about drawing circles and just going further and further away from where he was living. And that's how he eventually got to Fresno. Well, I did the same thing in the Seattle area. And for those of you who don't know, Washington is very similar to California. It's one of the most expensive housing markets statewide in the entire country. And no matter how big I was drawing those circles, it just didn't look pretty. And I got to the point where I was like, look, if I'm 5 hours away, or now I'm looking into Idaho, maybe I just should look at markets that make sense. I mean, it's going to be so far away anyways. I may as well just start looking at the best markets that I can think of. But yeah, I absolutely looked in Washington before I considered moving out of state.
Yeah, I think that's why. I mean, I think for most people, that's wise advice. At least for me, because I really am keen on you should go visit the area, see your properties. It's frankly just cheaper and easier to get in a car, especially if you're like me and you hate airplanes. It's almost a no-brainer. But at some point when you do that work, you do the investigation, the numbers don't look any better. At some point, you're going out of state. And It sounds like you went to North Dakota first, which I think is the right idea. What I like about that is the logic, because what I tell a lot of people when they go out of state or out of areas, like, where do you have infrastructure,
Mhm.
right? Where do you have those people? I always use the example of will show up at your funeral, right?
Right.
Because I always want people to tell me the bad news. Bad news doesn't get better with age. And if you're investing in an area where you don't have the infrastructure, you're paying everybody, right? You're paying everybody and they want to keep you happy. So sometimes they're giving you the prettiest spin that they can.
Mhm.
What do you think of all that?
Agreed 100%. I mean, delivering bad news is never fun. For those of you who don't know, I'm a police officer and I've had to deliver bad news many times, from something as simple as you're getting a ticket to turn around, you're under arrest, all the way to I'm sorry to inform you that a loved one has passed away. Bad news is never fun. Being able to deliver it professionally is a skill. It's something that you need both as an investor and that you should expect from the people you do business with, be that real estate agents, property managers, wholesalers, whoever. You need the real estate agent who will say, I know you're excited about this property. I know you saw it online. I know it works with all of your numbers and metrics, but I went out there and I looked at it in person and I don't like it. Here's the reasons why. A lot of agents are very interested in a commission check. Finding an honest agent who will give you bad news is a very important person to have on your team if you want to be successful at a distance.
So let's break this down, right? When everybody talks about the big four, right? Property manager, agent, banker, all of those folks. I actually think there's a fifth that's the most important.
Most
But
important person.
yeah, so why don't you talk about that?
So the most important person on your out-of-state investing team is none of those other people Mike just mentioned. It's your network of other investors that are already successful in the area. You need trusted boots on the ground, or people who have trusted boots on the ground that you can steal from them, right? Unlike school, unlike college, unlike high school, where it's not okay to plagiarize, where it's not okay to copy other people's answers, real life is not like that at all. And the smartest thing you can do is say, I don't want to reinvent the wheel. I want to go find somebody like Mike Zuber who knows how to do everything and cheat and copy every single strategy he has. I don't need to reinvent jack. And that's exactly what I did. Mike had introduced me to an individual who had already bought some rental properties out there. And I watched this guy grow his rental portfolio from in that area from, 0 to 10 rentals. And he kept saying, yeah, you should consider it. You should try it. And I was very hesitant because of the reasons I mentioned earlier, how dangerous a city Gary is, 13,000 abandoned buildings, suffered from deindustrialization. And so I sat there and I was like, I don't want to invest here, but I can't deny the fact that this other individual is seeing a bunch of success. Maybe I'll at least contact some of the people from his network. So I called and spoke with a property manager. I called and spoke with a bunch of local contractors. I started calling and speaking with real estate agents and figuring out what their perception of the area was and what their thoughts of the area was. I spoke with other people who invested in that area. You're always asking, every phone call is hey, who should I talk to? Who do you know that I should talk to? I just got off the phone this morning with an individual named Ferris who owns $110 million in real estate, 900 units. He's 30 years old, all
Oh,
in Northwest Indiana. Yeah. This guy is probably one of the most successful individuals that's in that 30 to 39-year-old age bracket. He's done it in 5 years. I jokingly said that my portfolio is a rounding error compared to his. And how did I meet Ferris? All I do is always ask people, who else should I talk to? My real estate agent that now is no longer an agent, she's a property manager that makes $200K a year working for Ferris, says, you should talk to Ferris. No problem. Who is he? Oh my God. He's like the next Warren Buffett of real estate. Wow.
yeah.
So you got to always be talking to other people. And really it comes from, if you want to be successful at a distance, you don't want to start from zero. You want to get as close to the finish line as you can so that you can make it across. And that just starts from stealing other people's team.
Yeah. I think that is the big thing that I see wrong on a lot of out of state. They always talk about the big four. And in my opinion, if you go down the big four route, it often starts with one of those resources that you find randomly. And I can't tell you how many times I've talked to a new investor that says, Mike, I got the agent. I got him. The one.
Yeah.
And I'm like, let's just assume for a minute that you have the one, which is very unlikely.
Mhm.
You should never have one. You should have dozens.
Right.
This
Agreed.
is not a game where you only get one. You can have
Right.
multiple. I think pitching the big four is where you start. I think it feels good because you can make progress. You can like check a list, right? I got an agent, I got a banker, I got a property manager, right? You're checking the boxes. Um, where I absolutely agree with you. You've got to anywhere you choose to invest, there are dozens of people killing it.
Mhm.
Whether you're 30 years old and have 90 units, or you're 32 years old and you've got, I don't know, 15 units or whatever you have, right?
Mhm.
There's somebody there killing it. And you got to tap in. And in today's social media, they're not even that hard to find, right? You can go to the Facebook groups, you can go to the real estate meetups, you can go to these things. And, I've helped no lie, more than 100 people because I come up when people look at Fresno or the Central
Mhm.
Valley. My name
Right.
is on that list. And we make introductions all the time. We want people in our network to win, right? We want our painters and contractors and agents to win, and we'll connect people together. And on occasion, I tell folks who to avoid, right? Because
Mhm.
that's equally important. Um, I really do think that's the key, and that's something that you did and you led by example, was tapping into another network. But let's realize that that's only a start, right? You got to use a sports analogy, first or second base. But what I saw you do is, yeah, you got your toe wet, you bought a turnkey property, but then you very quickly moved on from that and you started doing your own work, your own research. And most of your next purchases, I think you only bought one turnkey, maybe you bought two, but
I
all your
bought
other acquisitions.
Yeah,
Go
I
ahead.
bought one turnkey from an actual turnkey provider. I bought
Right.
a few turnkey rentals off the MLS that were vacant because I was like, why am I letting somebody else get the profit? I can do it. But
Exactly.
then I eventually transitioned into value add once I was a big boy.
But again, the other network, in my opinion, is not meant to be your forever network, right? As you move forward, as you learn, as you get that first one under your belt, your job is to continue to network and then build your P4, right? You can use
Mhm.
referrals, ask for references, do all of that. So why don't you talk about, Mike, where you were in, day one with the first unit versus what you've built over the last several years? Because I think the network is important.
When Zuber and I had our first call 5 years ago, he gave me two pieces of advice. Number one, he said you need to learn and understand seller financing, and number two, you need to network more. Networking is the most underrated skill that there is in real estate investing. And I remember when I was in your guys' position, and I guess I'm assuming that most of you guys are relatively new investors, but maybe some of you are more experienced. But I remember thinking, yeah, okay, I know networking is important, whatever, no big deal, Zuber. Okay, I'm sure I'm going to take you up on it, but okay. I did not understand how powerful networking truly is. Everything in life is about who you know. So you need to know as many people as you can. This goes for anything. I mean, everybody has experienced some sort of nepotism in their life before where somebody at work got a promotion that maybe you should have deserved, but they got it because they knew the right people. I played sports my whole life. Oh, this person's playing in front of me in a position I want because the coach is his older brother. It happens in politics. It happens in business. All of the time. Nepotism and who you know matters. Now, you can sit here and you can complain and you can get upset about the fact that it's unfair. And I don't blame you. It does suck. Or you can realize this is the game. I'm not going to hate the player. I'm not going to hate the game. I'm just going to understand the rules and I'm going to figure out how to be the best that I can. Networking is so important. And a lot of people go, okay, well, you know what? If I'm going to invest at a distance, how the heck am I supposed to? I'm not going to fly out there for real estate meetups like every other week. It's a great point. I recommend every single person that's interested in investing in real estate do what I did with my YouTube channel. My YouTube channel, I started because I watched people like Grant Cardone and Meet Kevin and Graham Stephan and Chris Crone and Robert Kiyosaki and all these people talk about how they bought real estate. And I wondered, is that really how they did it? Or are they giving us a fluffed up, sugar-coated version of it? Are they changing history to make them look better, sound better, promote their courses? I was like, I'm going to make a channel where I document the entire process of going from 0 rentals to however far I go. My first videos, horribly grainy, low quality, low sound quality. I'm umming and ahhing every other word. I did not expect to become successful on YouTube, but I wanted to document the journey. Now, the unintended side effect of that was, number one, I met Michael Zuber. Number two, as I started making videos about Gary, Indiana specifically, I very quickly realized I'm the only guy making videos about Gary, Indiana. I own every search term, every keyword, every return on a Google page about Gary, Indiana, and Northwest Indiana that it is. If you go on your computer right now and Google Gary, Indiana real estate, start looking at videos, you're going to see me 100 times. That is an incredibly powerful position to be that will help you network virtually. If you try to make real estate investing advice videos, there's millions of people doing it. But if you make real estate investing in Hardin County, Kentucky, or how to invest in Grand Forks, North Dakota, or Fresno, California, even bigger cities like Seattle, where I'm from, there's one or two people who consistently make videos in a city with, a million people in it. Everybody, even if you don't like being in the camera, even if you don't think you're good at making videos, I'm telling you, one of the most underrated things you can do is start a YouTube channel, talk about the deals you're looking at, the deals you're trying to do, because what ends up happening is how I've gotten multiple deals in a row now. Some random, no profile picture, no name wholesaler that's on Instagram sends me a message and says, "Hey man, I see you make videos about Gary. I got a deal. Do you want to look at it?" "Yeah, sure." And I look at it, I'm like, this is amazing. Yeah, I'll take this deal. They just come to you when you start talking about what you're doing. So virtual networking is underrated. It's extremely important. Anybody can do it. You just have to do it.
Yeah, I would second that. And if you don't want to be on video, go do social posts, do something.
Right.
You have to declare, right? The more you go out, and again, it won't happen after your first video. It won't happen after your 5th video. It probably won't happen after your 20th video. But somewhere down the line, once the dam breaks, they will just keep coming, right? I've been very clear with everyone here. A lot of the deals in 2020 and 2021, that was the years, remember, I wrote 100 offers and got nothing.
Right.
Those 100 offers were all out of the MLS because I do what I say. But I still did 9 deals. And those were all from my network, from people that knew I did deals. I'm going from memory, but I'm going to say half of those were from people who are repeat business, but the other half were one-offs. Hey, you buy in Fresno. I saw you online. I got a deal for you to look at. So very well said. So yeah, if you don't want to do video, do Facebook groups. Just be open and share what you're doing. Because again, it's about anytime you can get deal flow from folks you don't know. Because what happens is you get first look. And when you get first look, those are where the sweet deals come from. Mike, why don't we talk about what your team looks like today? Because it's probably very different than it was. So how big, like how many people in Gary, Indiana does, that would pick up the call if you called them today?
Oh, everybody on my team will pick the phone up if I give them a phone call. And that comes from just the fact that you need to treat people well. I remember that's something that you always said, your reputation is extremely important. Real estate is a relationship business. You treat everybody exceptionally well, even when you're unhappy, even if you have to let them go. Professionalism. We got to be a professional in everything that you do. Emotional, you cannot have emotional responses, emotional reactions. You have to learn to control that. Luckily, my background as a police officer has helped me to maintain professionalism in just about everything I do and say. But what does my team look like today? I've got a handful of different contractors that I use for a host of different problems. At this point, I've seen nearly everything, plumbing, foundation, roofing, electrical, basic remodel. I know everybody that I need has done work for me. I could text them, call them, get a response back right away. Got 2 different property managers, multiple different real estate agents, multiple different wholesalers, and 20 to 30 other investor friends in the area that I can send a deal to in a second if I need a second opinion, or if I want a second set of eyes, or hey, my electrician really sucks. Who are you guys using? I don't know what this guy's problem is. He fell off the planet. Let me find somebody out of my network. And I go to my network. So your network should always be growing. I highly recommend people make group chats. I've got group chats with my Gary and Indiana investor friends. There's like 15 to 20 of us in there. And, sometimes the group chat goes silent for a few weeks and nobody says anything. And then boom, all of a sudden we have like 4 days where just hundreds of messages are coming in. We're all talking about stuff and updating each other. But you can start your little Hardin County, Kentucky or Grand Forks, North Dakota Facebook real estate group or WhatsApp chat, and having contact with all those other individuals is invaluable.
Yeah. As you know, rule number 3 on ORAT rules, and I hope everybody on this takes this challenge down, meet 2 new people a week. Right? It's a lot easier than people think. But your example you just ran through is an example that you continue to do the work, right? People would think Gary, Indiana, there's not 30 investors there. There's probably 300 investors there, and 30 of them at this point. And then that allows, by knowing the other investors and deal makers, small to large, they become a spider web, right? You mentioned an electrician falling off the planet. You send out a group text, you're going to get back 3 or 4. And then, oh, by the way, what usually happens when I do that is, I'll send a note out to the top 10 guys I know in Fresno. I'll get 8 replies. 4 of them will be the same guy. I'm like, well, guess which one I'm picking, right? Yep. I'm going to call that guy first, right? So the quality investors usually bring quality work and all of that. It is definitely a people business. Let's talk about this, because sometimes I talk to new real estate investors and they've made the leap to out of state, out of area. Unfortunately, in my opinion, sometimes they play hopscotch, right? Oh, I got a deal in Tennessee. I got a deal in Florida. I got a deal in Pennsylvania. Why did you stay focused on Gary, Indiana? I mean, okay, you got a deal, you got a second one. Why didn't you go somewhere else?
I get this question a lot. In fact, I get people who message me, hey, are you interested in Indianapolis? And for those of you who don't understand the geography of Indiana, I don't blame you. I'm not from there either. Indianapolis is, 2.5, 3 hours away. And it's too far for my team to get to. My property managers don't go out there. My contractors don't go out there. Nobody that I know goes out that far. Now, could I build an entire new team out there? Sure, I could. And I've heard Zuber say this before too, but like, you put all the effort into building your A team. Do I want to have to now build another A team, or do I want to just pass on that deal and just keep looking in my preferred market? Now, does this mean that I'll never invest anywhere else? No, I think there's a major benefit to the fact that I'm in a CD market now, and I'd like to also be in an AB market later. But when I make the conscious effort to go find that AB market, I recognize that I'm going to be starting over at zero again from the ground and building up that network. And that takes time. It takes time to develop those relationships.
Yeah. In my opinion, you can't build an A team without size and consistency, right? Having one unit in Tennessee, one in Florida, one in Pennsylvania, I think were the states I picked. It's really hard. You don't get any scale, in my opinion, and I'll say it again here, somebody's ripping you off, right? You're just one little, door that they don't really care about. You're getting the least. If they're not directly stealing from you, you're on the bottom of the list. You get the worst contractors, the worst time, this, that, the other. What do you think of that?
I think you're ripping yourself off. You're ripping yourself off from the opportunity to do better. And I get it that when you look at a spreadsheet, on paper, these deals all look the same. Who cares what city that they're in? Who cares what neighborhoods they're in? On paper, hey, the return, the rent, the price, the interest rate, all this stuff, these deals are comparable, but they're not. You could show me a deal with a 30% return, and my average return on my market is 18%, and that 30% return could be 2 states away. That is not a comparable deal. I don't care if it looks better on paper. The deal with my team and my people is better than that deal because I know it's going to run smoothly. Now, that doesn't mean you should never look at another market. If your market shifts, you just have to understand that in order to actually compare these 2 deals, do you really have a property manager in this new market that's going to do a good job and make those spreadsheet analysis actually materialize? Or is it just on paper? And it doesn't mean anything on paper until you get paid some paper from a tenant, and you need a good property manager to make that happen.
Yeah, exactly. Well, let's go on to this, folks. And again, remember, this is now going to be open for questions. So if you want, please raise your hand. As always, We will go in the order that I see the hands raised. We will give you a chance to ask Mike and I questions about out of area and out of state. I guess the last question before we get into that, Mike, is I don't think Gary, Indiana has ever been on a top 10 list for places to invest. I see a lot of new investors chase various magazines or publications about the top 10, the top 5 markets to invest in. Um, I mean, again, Gary, Indiana has never been on a top 10 list. Why?
I mean, it's been on a top 10 list for murder capital of the country, 1993, you know, 3 times the national poverty rate, 3 times the national crime rate, a third of all buildings in the city of Gary are abandoned. It's been dubbed America's most miserable city. So it's been on some top 10 lists, just not the ones that you would think it should
the
be
wrong
on.
template.
Right, exactly. And I mean, I sat there and I was like, who would ever invest here? Why would anyone invest here? And then I realized that I was making one of the most critical mistakes that you can possibly make as an investor. And this is something that Bigger Pockets does all the time. When they jokingly dismiss the Midwest, an entire, 50 million people living in our country, an entire region of our country, the Midwest, the flyover states, who cares about them? In every single market, every market in the country, there's people who are investing successfully and people who are not investing successfully. You got to find the ones who are doing it right and copy them. California is impossible. It's a communist state. There's no way you can make it work there. Well, I mean, if you do it the Mike Zuber way, you can. You absolutely can. Oh, Dover, New Hampshire, unbelievably expensive. There's absolutely no way that you can invest there. Well, if you do it the lumberjack landlord way, you certainly can get to 137 units. Even me, I don't think that there's a way that I can invest here in Seattle, Washington. There's just no way I can do it. But if I had met Dion before going to Indiana and I had done things the Dion way and gotten his perspective, guess what? I could have. I just didn't know him yet. So you got to find the people in those markets, network with them, learn from them, the people who are doing it right, copy their strategies. That's how you become successful. Now, does a market have to be on that top 10 list? No. In fact, every single metric that the conventional wisdom would give you, well, you want a growing population, you want strong economic drive and factors, and you need job growth. Dude, Indiana doesn't meet a single one of those metrics outside of, low taxes and pro-business. It doesn't meet any of those metrics. However, Gary, Indiana is 45 minutes outside of Chicago. We jokingly say here in Seattle, Seattle is an hour away from Seattle. Hour-long commutes are just the norm. Just how it is. More and more people are getting out of very expensive Chicago and just want to move further out, telecommute back to work. And if they can cut their rent 60% by moving to a place like Gary, people are going for that option. Another thing to keep in mind, this is more of a overall future of real estate. When I sit here and I think about what our government decides to do and how badly they screw up financial policy and how inflation is just destroying the dollar. And you pretty much can guarantee that if there are 2 decisions, the government's going to make the wrong one. Do I think food stamps there's going to be more money paid out in food stamps or less 10 years from now? Probably more. Is there going to be more money paid out in Social Security, if it still exists, in 10 years or less? Probably more. Is there going to be more money paid out in Section 8 or less? Probably more. The gap between the have-nots and the have-yachts is getting a little bit further apart. And the middle class is shrinking. People are falling down, but a lot of people are also rising up into the higher income levels. And so what I suggest people do is sit there and say, okay, if I walked into a casino, I lose because the house always wins. But if I'm the house and the US government's walking into my casino, they're going to lose because I know they're going to inflate our dollars. Values are going to go up and they're going to pay out more money in Section 8. If I partner with the government in these lower income markets and get guaranteed rent from the government, and that rent will appreciate every single year because it has forever, all I have to do is just take my knowns and make it work. And so even though Gary in Northwest Indiana doesn't meet any of these metrics that conventional wisdom would say you need to invest in these markets for, there's a ton of Section 8. There's a lack of landlords providing Section 8 rentals. The wait list to get on the Section 8 program is closed because there's too many people. If you get on the wait list, it's 3 years before you get a property. If you get in the property, you're there for 7 years. It's quite literally like winning the lottery if you get into one of my houses. So all I need to do is go into the market and provide something that there's an astronomical demand for. Could I lose? Potentially, but it seems pretty unlikely.
Yeah. The last thing I want to say before we go to Richard, who had his hand up first, is one of the big things I talk about, obviously, is going to the location, especially if you don't have deep roots, maybe like North Dakota. I know you didn't go to Gary, Indiana for quite a while.
I
So
didn't. No.
why don't you talk about how you feel about that? Should people go? I know you didn't, talk about
Sure.
all of that. And we'll go to Richard.
Sure. So I'm gonna disagree with Mike, so you guys can get a little
Awesome.
spice. We'll get a little debate going. Mike, what's your contractor experience like? Are you good with a hammer and a nail gun?
Absolutely not.
No, you're not good at building things. No. Okay. All right. When did you get certified to do a home inspection?
Never.
You never have? Okay, perfect. Sounds good. Do you?
Damn police officer.
I know. All right. This is my interview skills. How many of your tenants do you place yourself?
0.
Oh, it's your property manager that does that, right?
Yes.
Okay, so you rely on the experience of a bunch of other people, correct?
Correct.
When you make a decision as to whether or not you want to buy a rental property, do you care what the pictures on the MLS showed, or do you care more about what the property inspection report says?
I actually care about the location first, the area around
Location
the
first.
house. Yeah, I don't care
Okay.
about the pictures of the house or the inspection report. I want to know what the 2 blocks radius around the house is.
Okay. And that's smart, but that's not something that really matters in Indiana. Yes and no. But because in Indiana, there's a lot of abandoned buildings, so you need to know whether or not there's abandoned buildings nearby. But you can look that up on Google Maps. The point that I'm trying to get here is, even if I go out to a market, let's say that I take a weekend trip out to Indiana, the odds that I find the house that I'm going to put an offer on in that one weekend is pretty small. We've talked about this many times.
So far, I agree with you. Yes, that's
Right.
not the goal, but keep going.
Right. In fact, we even harassed Spencer Cornelia because he did like a 3-day trip to 4 different cities in Ohio to learn the market. I'm like, but how much do you really learn the market? You
I
don't.
agree. Yeah.
And even if I put an offer on a house and then I flew out to look at the house, how much am I really learning about this house? Yeah, I can in person see the exact neighborhood. Or I could ask my real estate agent to stick his phone out the car window and drive up the street and down the street and record it and send it back to me. That's something I could do. I could get on Google Maps and look at the surrounding neighborhood. That's something that I can do.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to looking at the house, hey, there's a bunch of empty rooms. Well, in Gary, they might be hoarder houses. There's a bunch of rooms filled with crap or a bunch of rooms that are empty. I care more about what the inspection report says. What are the bones of the house like? What's the foundation like? The roof like? All that type of stuff.
This I don't know, disagreement, strategy, experience. It just might be a generation thing, because I started doing this 20 years ago, and there wasn't these magic phones where you could drive around, and there wasn't Google Maps. Again, I believe, as a new investor, kind of like Mike is saying, it's not really about the house. A house is a house is a house is a house. The inspection report is important. I challenge new investors to never forget the 2 blocks around the house, maybe 3 blocks. That will tell you what the future of your investment looks like, right? If there's a bunch of hoarder houses, or they're all burned down, or the corner's got a strip joint, or a check cashing, or what, you're going to know what that looks like. So that's what I had to go see. That's why I focused on the Mayfair districts. That's why I never left the Mayfair district for 3 freaking years. I suppose today, with today's technology, I could have learned it a lot faster. And like you say, have a trusted resources, go record a 5-minute video of driving up the streets. But yeah, to me, it's not the house. It's the area, right? The immediate area. Make sense?
The area is important. And I think you just admitted you're old, which is all right, Mike. I'm here for it. Still
I am
friends.
old, man. I'm old. Yeah, dude. 20 years ago, you were in freaking grade school, man. Come on.
I was.
Yeah. All right. Well, that was a lot of fun. Thank you for doing that with me. Richard, you are up first.
Good morning. So first off, Millennial Mike, I just want to say, kind of strange, because I've been watching your videos for about 6 months now. So even though I don't know you, feel like I know you a little bit, which is always an odd thing. But so I'm in Atlanta, Georgia area, South Cobb, which is more in the kind of more expensive suburbs. So 10 years from now, I want to be just like you, Class A, Class B properties, maybe 5 or 10. I'm not there yet, right? So I've been looking at Section 8 and doing areas in South Georgia which, much lower cost of entry, so the rentals down there are usually somewhere 600 to 900 a month. And the houses are, somewhere from 60 to 150, that kind of thing. So what I'm been doing is I'm trying to find an area with a lot of demand for Section 8 vouchers first. So I was going to the different city housing authorities, and some of them are closed wait lists, some of them have open wait lists. So as I'm going to these different cities in the area, is it better to go to one with a closed wait list, which maybe means that they have so many people waiting that no one, they just closed it, or go to one of the cities with open wait list?
So even if the list is still open, there's still going to be, in most cases that I'm aware of, huge demand for Section 8 properties. I wouldn't worry too much about whether or not it's closed or open. When I talk about the fact that Gary's is closed, that's just to highlight how obscenely ridiculous the demand for Section 8 rentals are. But as I mentioned earlier, we got 60 years of the war on poverty. We still got the exact same amount of people percentage-wise living in poverty. There's never going to be a change in this structural makeup of people at the bottom, people at the top, and people in the middle. There's always going to be a need for it. And will the government pay out more money 10 years from now? Absolutely. They're about to release the 2024 rental rates, and guess what? They going up, just like they did last year, just like they do every year. So I love the Section 8 program. I think it's a great strategy. There's obviously unique hurdles and stuff with it, but I think you'd be fine in any city that has a strong Section 8 program. I would just try to develop relationships with people in those offices.
Yeah, so I've been doing Yeah, so Richard, let me just give you some more color on that. I've been doing this a long time, helping people. Some cities run their programs different. They may be open, but they could have a 5-year wait list. Right. They really do handle them differently. Like Fresno, for example, where I've been, has been open or closed, I don't know, half a dozen times in 20 years. The wait list has never been less than 5 years. Wow. I mean, think about this. You think you win the lottery by getting access to a voucher, but you don't get a home for 8 years. Think your situation has changed? It's kind of crazy. So I don't think I'd get hung up on closed or open.
Mm-hmm. And just one more thing. This is a reason, again, why you need to make a YouTube channel. I post my videos on YouTube. I also repost them on like TikTok and Instagram. I get people that reach out to me and say, I got a Section 8 voucher for a 2-bedroom in Gary. Can I rent from you? Here's my property manager's info. Just the more you talk about what you're doing, stuff comes your way. You need to talk about it.
Awesome.
Question 2,
and
Richard?
Then, yep. And then the only last one real quick is, especially for the Section 8 properties. So I'm looking, a lot of them are super, super dirty, and they need cleanup and probably minor repairs. How do you know what is good enough? Because if I'm in an area where I'm renting for $3,000 a month and it's a Class A, then you do it to the nines and get everything perfect. But for this kind of program, you want safe, clean. What is good enough?
So you don't want to over repair your property. You don't want to spend more than you need to. And so what I typically do in my case is I'm partnered with a great property manager who has fantastic contacts with Section 8. We've never failed an inspection. She is the expert. I know Lumberjack, he self-manages. So what he does is he'll call the Section 8 people to come out there and just tell them what they want fixed. Then he'll do exactly what they said and nothing more. Like you don't need to over improve. And that's not saying he makes bad product. I've been in his buildings before. They're beautiful, but he is going to fix exactly what they need for their code and nothing more, because why would you spend more money than you need?
Yeah. What I would tell you about learning Section 8 is once you've learned it once, it never changes. Right. What I'll tell you about a Section 8 house to watch for is, it's just the little things that can catch people, like chip tile, like a cracked tile. That'll catch you every time. Carpets peeling up at the edges, that'll catch you. Actually, I don't even put carpet in my units anymore. I just do the LVT. It lasts longer. It's cheaper in the long run. Health and safety, what does that mean? It means you're going to, at least in California, I'm assuming it's the same across the country, you're going to have to do fire alarms and CO2. Realize that CO2 detectors seem to disappear a lot. So when a Section 8 inspection is coming, I would suggest putting a new CO2 detector, because I don't know why they just disappear, get up and walk away. Then you're going to have to look at the windows. Some cities have bars. If they don't have quick release, at least on the bedrooms, you're going to have to add quick release on the bars. That's kind of my quick rundown. But what
You're
the
gonna
beauty
have
of
two
Section 8,
entrances in
yeah,
and
two
out of
entrances.
every unit.
Yeah. Yeah. Once you learn the list, it's the same. And you could probably even have your PM or your network kind of get a checklist. They're probably pretty standard, I would guess.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
All right. Very good, Richard. Thank you very much. Catherine, your hand was up next.
Good morning. Good morning, Mike. Nice to meet you. And good morning, Zuber, and good morning, everyone. Millennial Mike, my husband and I live in Oregon, one of the most landlord-unfriendly states in the country.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a shame because I'm a broker here, so I wish I could avail myself of the ability to use my skills in this state to transition into investing, but it doesn't work out. So we've been looking out of state. We previously lived in Las Vegas, and I was a broker there as well. So we're kind of looking there, but Vegas is expensive and it's not flowing very well, and blah, blah, blah. So we do have some ties to another place in the Midwest, and we're kind of looking there, and maybe an adjacent state here or there, just because the Midwest seems to be less expensive. So my question, I have two questions. The first one, you mentioned that fifth person that you need, find another investor, find someone you can talk to, etc. Is that the first thing you would do?
Yes.
Then? Okay.
Absolutely. In fact, I would pick my market based on who that person is. And it can be multiple people. It should be multiple people. So Hardin County, Kentucky, Tulsa, Oklahoma, and Grand Forks, North Dakota, I start looking up Facebook pages for all of those. I go on YouTube and I say, real estate investing, Grand Forks, North Dakota. Who's making videos? Who has the Facebook group? Does the Facebook group have enough people that I can talk to people? Can I start messaging people in that Facebook group? If I can't get any traction into building a network in that area, I'm just going to write that area off because it's not worth the risk. There's too many other areas that are also good I could build a team in.
Okay. So YouTube and Facebook, you're looking for other investors. Okay, cool. All right. So that was my first question. So you're looking for other investors you can talk to, get the down low, etc. And my other question then might be irrelevant because the first question, but I'm wondering if we're kind of looking mostly in Missouri, the St. Louis area, maybe Tennessee. We have some ties to the St. Louis area. My husband actually works there. We have a commuter marriage. He works there and we have some ties there. We're kind of thinking of some suburbs in St. Louis. We're looking at kind of B-class properties, maybe plus or minus. Would you consider, but we're also thinking maybe Tennessee. I've got some family in Tennessee, so I've got very loose knowledge of some of the areas of Tennessee. Would you consider industry? Because I know St. Louis has got a multitude of industries, and would you consider industries, population growth, and all those things you mentioned?
So I didn't consider any of that when it came to Gary, because like most people, I looked it up, I Googled it, and it all looked horrible. Deindustrialization. U.S. Steel founded the city in 1905. It used to have 95,000 employees, currently has 5,000 employees. Most manufacturing has left the area. Population's been declining from 200,000 down to 67,000. None of these metrics are acceptable by the conventional wisdom. However, when I start talking to other individuals in the area who are investing there, and you realize they've been doing it for years, they're having success, the rents get paid, Section 8 gets paid, they're growing a portfolio. You say, well, how could you possibly be doing this when all this negativity and bad stuff is happening? At the end of the day, like I've said before, there's people who are doing it right and people who are doing it wrong. Will the city of Gary, Indiana, 40 minutes outside of 2.6 million population Chicago, ever go down to a population of 0? No. It's right on one of the Great Lakes. I think it's Lake Superior. It can't ever get to 0. Can it fall and flatten out? Yes. Now, I'm not sure about the specific cities in your area. Can some cities potentially go to zero? Yeah, sure. Of course, some cities, gold mining towns in the middle of nowhere. But I think where we're at right now, if you're within an hour and a half of some major city, it'd be very hard for your city to ever depopulate completely and not have any type of industry. But ultimately, you're going to have a better idea of whether or not that's a good market if you talk to more people. Most people have hesitancy, fear, apprehension about getting started invested anywhere. The only way that you combat that type of fear is through confidence, is through talking to other people and gaining confidence through their experiences. My friend Senya right here, who's I think probably the next person to ask your question, she and I talk about Gary all the time. She lives in New York. She wants to invest in Gary. Through me, she's met several other real estate investors. She's part of my group chat for Gary. And she now has confidence in an area she's never been to, she's never invested in, and that has all the horrible metrics. Why is she confident enough to put an offer? She has an offer right now on a house that was listed for 70. She put an offer in for 60. She was being disrespectful, like Mike talks about. And where did that confidence come from? Well, it came from the fact that she talks to me on a daily basis to the point where she has to apologize to me for annoying me, even though I tell her she doesn't. But if you get to be friends with the right people in the right markets, you'll realize, okay, these metrics don't look great, but am I just making up all of the numbers and all of the properties and all of the purchases and my network of contacts that you can verify and go call yourself? I'm not making all of those things up. So if you do the work to gain the confidence by talking to enough people, you'll know whether it's a good market for you or not.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I over the years, the 20 years of trying to help people, a lot of people come to me, like when US News and Report or wherever these, like the top 10 markets for 2024, right? Bang, 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 bang. It doesn't matter. It's who do you know? What kind of network? Does it feel right to you? Are you learning what's going on? Population growth, wage growth, all those things are nice, but it's the network. It's the fifth man or the first. I really do think it's the first person you should find is other investors winning. And if you get a feeling that they're winning in a way you don't like, well, then don't invest there, right? Because maybe they're, cutting corners or doing something, mischievous or slumlords. Then move on. But yeah, I do think it's that first person to figure out.
That's very cool information. Thank you both very much. Good to know.
Catherine, one more thing. YouTube and Instagram, but also, YouTube and Facebook, but also Instagram. And I know a lot of people may not have an Instagram account. I didn't want to make an Instagram account because I'm not a 12-year-old girl. But unfortunately, over the last 10 years, Instagram has evolved to the #1 way that people network with other people. Everybody networks no longer via email, phone numbers. It's through Instagram. I've spoken to like unbelievably famous professional athletes and celebrities that for whatever reason decided they wanted to start learning about real estate investing. Somehow they heard about Indiana and now they've sent me a DM into my inbox to ask me questions about Indiana. I'm like major professional athletes. And it's like, oh, cool. This is how people connect because like, if you look at Zubers, you go on his Instagram, you can see who he is, what he's about. You can see the links to most of his other websites, and you can send him a direct message like that. So if you don't have Instagram, you need to get one. And just like YouTube and there's a search bar. You search Gary, Indiana. And who posts about it? Me. So you'll see my stuff. And then other things like Bigger Pockets forums. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of Bigger Pockets, but their forums are still great. You can go on their website and find people talking about certain areas, and you can network that way.
Yeah, their forums are amazing. Definitely check out their forums.
I love that, Mike. I love it. I'm on Insta, and I think I know I follow you, Millennial Mike. I follow Zuber on whatever he's on Facebook. I'm on Facebook and Insta, so that's great. I love knowing Insta is the #1. So thank you.
Yeah, I would tell you, Catherine, just to follow up with Mike, I get direct message on Insta. I don't know, half a dozen times a day. It's usually how new people reach me is Instagram. Cool. They don't go through YouTube. Very good. All right, Catherine, thank you very much. Senya, you're up. So you're bugging Millennial Mike, huh? I like it. Keep doing that.
I am. Good morning, everybody. Hi, Mike. Good to see you. Okay. So my question is, how do you manage out-of-state rehabs?
So
if you don't go through your property manager?
I'm sorry, what'd you say was the last part?
If you don't go through your property manager.
Yeah. So everything in life is, a transition, and you should be growing and you should be progressing. Now, I started out with turnkey because I didn't want to manage a rehab. I didn't want a rehab, period. Then I finally started to say, I'll do some value add, minor value add, small value add, because my property manager, even in my turnkey rentals, stuff breaks. All right, I'll handle some basic stuff. My property manager, we can replace the carpet, we can paint. And then I have more and more conversations with my property manager. Well, what if I buy a house that needs more than just a little paint and a little carpet? Oh, we've got the teams in place necessary to get this done. Okay, cool. She'll manage a remodel for me. All right, sounds good. I'm going to buy this property, factor in the costs for remodeling it, and hey, it worked out for me. The burst strategy, great. Okay, well now, instead of paying her the management fee, the GC fee, general contractor fee for managing it, I know the contractors at this point. I got their numbers. I'll just call them myself. And so it's this progression that everybody will go through if you stick with it long enough. It's very, very hard. And this is something I tell people all the time. They're like, hey, what can I do to avoid mistakes? You're going to make mistakes. Things aren't going to work out as planned. It's very, very hard to learn enough, study enough so that you never have to go through a growing process. You can just skip all the way to the end. I don't think that it's possible. I think you need to learn and study and network enough to get you to a good starting point. But at the end of the day, you're going to learn things from experience. When it comes to doing rehabs, whatever the price is they tell you, make sure that you're comfortable with double the amount. Whatever the time frame is they tell you, make sure you're comfortable with double the amount. And then say, there's always the chance some crazy, crazy thing, some black swan event could happen, and I have to be able to have plans in place to handle those things. And you just kind of build that experience and that tolerance and that resistance to those one-off events or delays or whatever it is. You just build that over time. So how do I manage it? I'm on the phone all the time. My contractors are texting me, calling me. I'm calling and texting with them. You're going to find that as you manage people like general contractors, this is just a contractor thing in general. And I came from construction as a background before I was a cop. A lot of times what is it? The squeaky wheel gets the grease. You got to follow up. You got to call. You got to chat. You got to stay on these people. It's not because they're lazy. It's because they got a bunch of different jobs, and whoever the squeakiest wheel is who they're focusing on. So you got to be your own advocate. I know that Senya, you and I have chatted about, should you buy turnkey? Should you buy light remodel? Should you buy a big remodel as your first rental property? And whatever you decide to do, no matter if it's light or full remodel, you still have to be your own biggest advocate, and you need to follow up with people.
Well, I want to, I don't know if it's push back or tweak a little bit. What I heard Senya ask is her first remodel. That's what I heard. I would, my opinion, strongly recommend going through one of your team members for that first one. I think trying to do a full remodel, i.e. you have the contractor's number the first time, that's a level of risk I would not be comfortable with. What do you think about that?
No, I agree. And we've chatted many times about this before, how I've told her best bet would be to go with something that's turnkey or close to turnkey. And Senya's sent me some stuff that maybe needs more work, and we've talked about that. Personally, I would prefer that everybody get started with a turnkey rental property, because I think it's easy to get a win on the board. We should all be looking to get a nice base hit, an easy W on the board, something that you can start to learn. However, the fact that the market is much different today than it was when I got started, I have to honestly assess the advice I give and the circumstances that people like Senya are in. And when she goes, Mike, I've been looking for 6 months, there aren't any turnkey properties that cash flow because rates are high and prices are high. What do I do? All right, well, in her case, she has me. There's no way I'll let her fail. If I have to call and manage it myself, I will, because I'm not going to let somebody that is friends with me and supports me fail. Does that advice apply to every single person? No, but that's also why I make sure that you network with other investors, because she's got me. Yeah. You can find somebody in your market that can help you and invest in you and care about that relationship and friendship.
This is why the fifth man is the first person you need to have. You need to build a relationship with someone that you could go, oh my God, my electrician flaked. What do I do? I can't get a permit. He didn't pull a permit. He pulled the wrong permit. They need to be able, otherwise you're just floundering. right? This is why it's not the house. It's not even the market. It's who do you know? Who have you built a relationship with? Who could you raise a question to? Who could you call in emergency? You know, and just like you, there are people that have built on my relationship in Fresno. If they have a problem and they're like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, you know, I place a couple of phone calls and we try to figure those out. But I still, again, the first property, because you got to remember, lots of people are going to see this. This is not only for Senia, this is for everyone. Be very careful taking on a heavy fixer as your first property because you think the numbers are good. You're probably wrong. And you're probably wrong by a mile.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Sorry, I digress, Senia. More questions?
No, thank you. That was very helpful, Mike. Another quick question. So once you receive what is this? Property report, right?
Inspection report, you mean?
Inspection report, yes, sorry.
Okay.
So once you receive your inspection report, what would be the next steps? And what do you look at like the most?
Just so I'm clear, Senia, when you say an inspection report, there are two different kinds. One is just like a walkthrough and a checklist. The other one that I get often is a list, and the person that did the inspection report has prices. Are you getting the full inspection report that says, hey, this is broken, it's going to cost X to fix? Do you get that, or just the checklist?
So I'm supposed to get both.
Okay, good. All right, cool. All right, go ahead, Mike. Sorry.
Yeah. So if you're asking for the next step, once you've gotten the inspection, obviously the first thing you do is you're going to review it, and you're going to want to review that with people who understand, and you're going to need to follow up with contractors if there are repairs that need to be done. And like Zuber said, if it's your first property and there's major repairs that need to be done, you probably want to avoid it. What are the things that I care about the most? Roofs, foundations, HVAC, plumbing, electrical. There's a lot of knob and tube out there. It's hard to get insurance on knob and tube unless you go through certain companies. Electrical boxes have to be upgraded. Is it a boiler? Is it an HVAC system? How old's the roof? Does the foundation have any major problems? Now, none of those are an immediate disqualifier. It depends on what the issue is. The roof is, spongy and molding and things like that. All right, it's probably an immediate disqualifier. Or unless they want to pay to put a brand new roof on it, we can always talk about it. Every single thing that there's a problem, I'll immediately come back and ask for money, ask for better terms, ask for a lower price. If they say yes, great. A lot of the times they won't. And I've paid for many inspections and had to walk away. That's just the cost of doing business. There goes another $600. There goes another $700. But what it did was save me from a much bigger problem down the road. So you do look at those things. Now, the inspection report, you have to be aware, it is going to seem scarier than it is. These guys' job is to go out there and tear this place apart. Everything's wrong. Everything needs to be looked at by a qualified professional. Everything sucks. It's the end of the world. It's not. It's not. The outlet covers need to be replaced. There's some carpet pulling. Yeah, okay. There's a lot of small things that they notate. They're just doing their job. The major things are what I listed earlier. And if there are major issues with those or issues with those, they need to be addressed. You need to have a plan for them.
Yeah, the one I would tell a new investor who's never done a deal of all of the ones you listed that would scare me would be foundation.
Yeah, foundation is tough to get around.
A brand new investor, in my opinion, if there's foundation, corner of the house is, lower or whatever, I would tell a new investor. Now, again, I bought plenty of houses that had foundation issues, but I would not do that as my first one.
Mm-hmm.
Roofs are to be expected. Roofs age, right?
Yeah.
So those are okay as long as you're getting the price for it. That would make sense.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely probably avoid knob and tube, right? AKA electrical if you're a first-time investor. Rewiring a house is actually not that expensive, but I think I would avoid that as a new investor.
Depends on where you are, because in Gary, it's all knob and tube. All the houses, 40s, 50s, it just is what it is. So what you want to make sure you have is no existing known electrical problems, no exposed anything. And then if you have it, well, then, that's, if you're looking at that market, that's what you pretty much just have to accept.
Yeah, in the price. And at the end of the day, as Mike said, what the inspection report for a new investor should be a tool to get to basically get a better price or better terms, right? Because again, that is something you can share with the other side, especially if it's something that was like if you get a report back that says the roof is an immediate replace and it wasn't in the listing, guess what? We're going to have a conversation, and we're going to, because you didn't disclose that, it's going to go down. So that's my thoughts, Senia. You have one last
Awesome.
question?
Thank you
Senya?
so much. Thank you, Mike.
Oh, you're
Thank you,
good.
Senya. My A1 since day one.
Well, I want to know about your offer. Have you got a counter yet? You offered 60 on a 70. Where are we at with that? Nope.
Green is jumping around. Mike, you
Nope.
there?
Yep, I'm here. All right. That's okay. Karen, you're up next.
Okay, so I have two questions for you. One is, what are your thoughts about purchasing houses that are for 55 and over only?
So this might be a better question for Zuber. I've never purchased in a retirement community only. The only thing that comes to my mind immediately is I have purchased rental units or housing units that are for a certain, I don't know if demographic's the right word, but I buy intending for Section 8, which is of course a certain segment of the renter pool. So do I have a strong market of demand and qualified tenants on Section 8 program in Indiana? Absolutely. Are you in a heavy retirement area like maybe Florida or something? Is there a strong market demand for it? If there is, it might be a good idea, but I'll let Zuber take this one.
Yeah, so I've looked at a couple of these. You actually have to look at the HOA or the rules of that community. Some of them don't allow rentals. Some of them only allow up to a certain percentage, like 10%. So anytime you go into a community like that, just like if you're going to buy a condo or a townhouse, lots of HOA rules, and the HOA rules may limit, may be a pain, may have fees. So I would dig into that. If it turns out that they accept them and the numbers work, I'm not opposed to it. In the last 20 years, I've evaluated a dozen or so. And for whatever reason, it just didn't make sense. There were other opportunities, but I'm not opposed to it. I would do it if the numbers work.
Okay. My second question is, what are your thoughts about investing in a small town that's about 45 minutes, maybe an hour away from two decent sized tourist destinations, but potentially near a new amusement park?
In every single market, there's people who are doing it right, people who are doing it wrong. Copy the ones doing it right and base it off their success. Are other local investors in your area investing in that same small town? If so, how are they doing it? Who do they use as their manager? What price points? What type of rentals are they targeting? Student housing, short-term rentals, mid-term rentals, because we're close to a hospital, we're doing the nurse thing, or long-term rentals? If you network and talk with the right people, because at the end of the day, I don't know the market, neither does Zuber, probably. But there's someone there who is as knowledgeable as well, nobody's as knowledgeable as Mike, but maybe he's a close second. There's somebody in that market who knows whether or not it's a good deal or whether or not it's a good market. So you got to go out and find that person. As I mentioned earlier, 45 minutes nowadays isn't really that far for most people. And so I wouldn't be super concerned that, the city's too small to be successful. 45 minutes isn't that far.
Okay.
Yeah, the one thing I'll just say on that, Karen, is it would, to Mike's point, it would really probably lean towards what kind of rental you want to produce, right? Because if you're near, destinations and then a new amusement park, it doesn't feel like long-term rentals to me. But again, that's a bias that, I might be wrong.
And I was thinking long-term rental because although, so there's some empty property and stuff right now. And so I did think about potentially buying a piece of property and then building a duplex, but I do need to talk to a real estate agent. A friend of mine just brought it up this last week because a huge chunk of property near where he lives has just been purchased, and the rumor is they're going to build a new amusement park in the next 5 years.
Whatever,
yeah. So I was thinking, well, those people have to have a place to live.
Yeah. I would again, I think Mike's point's dead on, is find out who's making it work today.
Okay.
I think that's wise advice.
Thank you.
Insider trading is legal in real estate. So when you get that little bit of insider information right there, hey, if you make a good choice on it, you'll be real happy you did. I would just talk to the right people.
Yeah. I mean, because right now there's nothing out there. The friend who's telling me, I'm like, this makes zero sense because there's nothing there.
Right.
It's like two dirt roads.
Yeah, probably not. Yeah, probably not a good idea. But yeah, see if there's somebody doing it.
Yeah, real quick. The right person is not the real estate agent, because everything's sunshine and rainbows to them. The right person is other investors in your area, because you have to make sure you can run your long-term rental numbers at what today's rates are, and does it work, and do you have a market, and would it be great if a bunch of people come in and the demand goes up and rents go up because there's a new park being, that'd be great. That'd be great. But if it doesn't happen, you need to make sure you can actually maintain your rental and cash flow properly right now at the rates that they're at right now.
Yeah, it needs to work today, not tomorrow. Absolutely right, Mike. Karen, do you have one last question, or are you good?
Nope, I'm good. Thank you.
Awesome. Next up, Jason.
Hey, morning, Mike.
Hey.
Morning.
Good to see y'all. So, I hate to beat a dead horse here, Mike. I'm gonna ask you why, Gary, but it's more particular. I know you mentioned, it's a little way away from the metro city of Chicago, and maybe you talked to other investors and they kind of pulled you in. But I'm really trying to figure out, like, because there's so many other cities that might be like Gary, right? Cities away from the metro, but why Gary specifically?
Well, most people know I'm a police officer. I'm also a SWAT officer. And at some point, I'm going to retire with real estate. And if I don't get shot at least once a week, am I even living anymore? So I figured, go to Gary, catch a couple of rounds. Just kidding. It's terrible. It really does. It really does come down to the fact that as I started looking at all of these other markets, you're spoiled for choice. There was a bunch of different opportunities all over the country. And, when I was looking in 2018, rates were a little bit better. Prices were certainly lower before the pandemic. And there was lots of different opportunities. Cleveland, Cincinnati, Ohio, Oklahoma, Birmingham, Alabama, Montgomery, Alabama, Missouri. I looked at things down there. there's so many different markets. How do you pick one? And then when I tell people I chose Gary, Indiana, they go, wow, you're an idiot. Why would you, of everywhere you could have chosen, why would you choose Gary, Indiana? And it came down to exactly what Zuber and I have talked about. I know, Jason, do you have any rentals yet?
I don't.
You don't? Okay.
Yeah.
How old are you? Do you mind if I ask?
28.
28. Okay. It's the same age I was when I bought my first rental property. The older you get, the more people that you meet, the more that you expand your network. I don't know how to describe it. I just remember when I was your age and I first talked with Zuber and he said network. And I heard it. Okay, I get it. I need to talk to more people. Sure. But it isn't until you actually do it and you actually start realizing that, yes, everything in life is about who you know. That, like, the more people you talk to, I told the story earlier. I got off the phone with a guy who was $110 million in real estate, 900 rental units. That came from my network. That's just a freaking Facebook recommendation and somebody who talks with one of my agents. The doors that open up to you because you talk to people, the friendships that you can truly build, like Senya, I was just talking about earlier. I know that Senya has, a young son who likes to play chess, who's in high school. We talk about, she's recommended children's books for my son. I've never met her. We met on Instagram after she watched some videos of mine, but we became friends because we just chat back and forth. I always jokingly make fun of myself for the fact that, I grew up, and Jason, you and I are pretty similar in age. Dude, we grew up in the digital age. I played a lot of World of Warcraft. You probably did Call of Duty. I did Call of Duty, Halo. If you remember going home from school and sitting down and getting on Xbox Live and talking to the same people you played with yesterday and the day before, and then you played with them for another couple of years, you can develop legitimate friendships with people you've never met to the point where you care about them, you know their life story, you're interested in the things that they're doing. And when you build that relationship with someone who has a similar goal like real estate investing, and just because they live in some other part of the country, that doesn't matter anymore. The technology has gotten us to the point we're at now where Senya and I are good friends. And Zuber and I met one time in person, once. We talk every single week for years at this point. I know that networking seems like a cliche, easy answer. I promise you, as you start looking at these markets and you make the friendship with the right people in the right market, you won't be interested in anything else. You'll be like, this is the one I'm doing it because I know these people. These are my guys, and girls.
Yeah, just a second. That I interviewed Mark, the financial firefighter, and he lives in Hawaii. For those who don't know his story, but one of his friends introduced him to Pittsburgh. Talk about being on the other side of the country, 5,000 miles away. But it is It is that person, right? Who you now you have to be comfortable with the city, right? You don't like Gary, Indiana, it gives you the heebie-jeebies, blah, blah, blah. Great. Find another one. You as the person plunking down the capital have to be comfortable with it. But yeah, it's being able to tap into and get to know and build relationships, just so you have that, like we talked about earlier, that electrician who ghosted you, you have an emergency handle. Like if you follow some top 10 list just because Wall Street Journal said it was the best city and you don't have an infrastructure, good luck. You're going to get, I mean, I know people who lose lots of money in the best market across the country. It's not the market. It's not the house. It's the network that will support you through thick and thin.
Nice. That's good. Thank you for answering that. I have a couple more. Can I?
Sure, go ahead. Yeah,
okay,
2 more. Everybody gets 3. Otherwise, you go back after that. You go to the line.
Okay. So do you do like single family and commercial, or are you only into like one or the other?
So right now I only have single family houses, duplexes, and a triplex. I've been working on this wholesale deal for a 7-unit property, which would technically be like a commercial loan. Although we may pay all cash. I have yet to release this news, but there's a couple of very, very successful, famous real estate YouTube investors that have reached out to me because I'm the king of Gary. I'm the expert for Gary. And they're like, we want to partner with you. You don't need to bring any money. We want to cut you in at 1/3 of the deal. And we want to buy 100 units over the next year. We just know that you're the expert. We want you on our team, which again goes back to why you need to be the expert. You need to put what you're doing out there. And so we're working on a 7-unit deal right now and the seller's just a little tough. But have I done like any commercial? Like, are you talking commercial larger than 5 units or commercial businesses?
5+ units.
5+. Dude, I love the idea of doing those types of deals. I'm actively looking for those types of deals right now. That's what I want to buy.
Gotcha. Does your
I haven't done one yet. What'd you say?
Does your approach change from single family versus smaller multi to commercial, or is it kind of pretty consistent?
So in terms of how you run the numbers, like the way that Zuber teaches and the yield that you get, that's a really quick way to compare deals of any size against each other. If you're just looking at yield, how much cash, what's it getting back in a return? That's very similar. In terms of how you actually find the deal, fund the deal, manage the deal, there are some differences there. You're not going to find as many 5-plexes on the MLS as you can if you're going through wholesalers who are actively messaging everybody. So if I just go to realtor.com, yeah, there's some larger unit buildings on there, but not a lot. However, if I tell my network and my property manager and my real estate agents and my wholesalers and my contractors, find me these properties, they come to me. I start talking about the fact that I'm looking for that on YouTube and Instagram. People start DMing me about it. So I find it a little bit differently. And then in terms of funding it, obviously the lending is different. And I want to try to do seller financing on everything. That's what I take as the approach for every single deal I look at. I start with seller financing. And then if it's a no, we work back from there. I've contacted Stephen Dow about multiple properties, Velocity Mortgage, because they'll lend on stuff like that. And once I find the deal, if it works, I'll figure out a way to get the money somehow. I'll figure it out.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, because I own both of them. I will tell you the biggest thing that surprised me when I went from a house to a commercial property, turnover is higher, right? An average in a house is 8 years. An average in an apartment's about 2.5. And stuff, you become like if you're doing self-management, you do become a counselor because your neighbors are closer together. You get a lot more drama, a lot more headaches. Those are 2 of my big surprises, given that I own both.
Gotcha. Thanks for that tip. The last question for me is, what are some of the biggest lessons learned you've had going out of state with investing that you probably would tell the next person that does it? Hey, make sure you do this. Make sure you don't do that.
Sure. I've definitely already beaten the networking dead horse to an even deader point, so I'll skip that one. I would say for me, there was definitely a lot of resistance to the idea about doing it, and apprehension, and I think that it took me longer. If I had started researching it sooner, I could have started earlier, maybe in early 2018. I didn't buy the first property in Indiana until beginning of 2020. I could have afforded it and bought end of 2018 and certainly the entire year of 2019, but I was resistant to the idea. I didn't even want to look at it. Didn't even want to consider it because I already knew, this is a terrible market. How could anybody be successful here? So I would say if I was to go back and give myself advice, it would be like, don't say no and pretend that you're educated on something when you're not. At least go out there and do the research. And then the next piece of advice that I would say is you should never tell yourself no on anything. You should always make other people tell you no. I didn't think that I could be a police officer until I was like 25, because who would hire a 21-year-old kid to be a cop? Look, turns out that the average age for people in my law enforcement academy was like 22. I didn't think that I could buy a house and invest in real estate because, I'm not old enough to buy a house. I'm only 19, 20, 21, 22. Well, turns out if you're 18 years old and you have 2 years of work history, you technically can qualify for a loan and you could buy a house. But because I told myself no, I just thought it in my head, oh no, I can't do that yet. I got to wait still. How many different things in your life are you telling yourself no about that you don't even really realize you're telling yourself no about? Audit your own network. That's one of Zuber's sayings. You might need to audit yourself a little bit because we could be our own worst enemy when it comes to thinking negative thoughts. Make someone else tell you no. Go out there and try to apply for something. And if they tell you no, or if the market tells you no, like Senya's got an offer out. Could they have told her no? Sure, but they didn't. They didn't tell her no when she offered 60,000 instead of 70,000, even though they had just dropped the price a few days earlier from like 80 to 70, and she offered 60. They didn't tell her no. They told her, how about 65? And she said, yes, she's going to get an inspection and we're going to ask for 60. Like, make other people tell you no. Just try.
Yeah. The one thing I would tell a new person is you're going to make mistakes. Don't repeat them. Learn the lesson the first time, right? If you get ripped off or someone disappoints you or something, the rent's not what you expected, figure out what you missed and don't repeat the mistake. The most expensive mistake in my world is not the first one. It's when you freaking repeat them, right? Because you can learn from that. So I would take every scraped knee, every, busted finger and learn the lesson so that doesn't happen again.
Yeah, thank you both.
All right, Jason, thank you very much. Van Reeth, you're up, buddy.
Hey, so I had a couple questions. So my first one is how do you develop that spidey sense about when things, trusting people, when to trust them, when not to, and if things like, because you're gonna be like, if you're doing this out of state, then you don't know if somebody's gonna, blowing smoke up.
Mm-hmm.
Up you. So yeah.
Well, a couple things. First, Van Reeth, may the force be with you. I just realized that you're on Tatooine right now. I like that. Zuber, that's a Star Wars reference.
Hey, I knew that was Star Wars. I had no idea which planet it was, but I remembered it was Star Wars.
Number two, I think most people think, hey, we're a great judge of character. And most of us actually aren't. We all have blind spots. I've got a lot of training as a police officer in detecting lies and things like that. I still got plenty of blind spots. I can't read everybody. We're all capable of making mistakes. And again, I know we've talked about networking a lot, but this is why you rely on your network. I don't want to rely on my ability to discern whether or not the other person's honest or whether or not they're truthful or they're going to do a good job. What I want is to ask my friend, my good, close personal friend, who they used and why. And then if I use that person, the recommendation, I use the referred person, and they aren't performing adequately, I go tell on them. I tell on them real quick. I go back to my friend and I say, hey, the property manager you recommended me is always so slow to send me messages. I don't know why they don't ever respond to me. This is a real story I had happen. My property manager, this is why I have two property managers, because I was looking for backups in case things didn't work out. I don't know why the property manager just doesn't get back to me. Well, I had one little tiny rental. I was $100 a month to them. What do they care? But then I go tell on them to dad, who's got 25 rental properties, and dad starts complaining on my behalf, and dad represents a much bigger portion. And now they're going to start treating me a little bit better, and I get the service that I need. Are they going to rip me off if I go tell on them for ripping me off, and now somebody else is looking at them like, I recommended you? You do business for me. If any of the people I recommend treat anybody poorly, I always ask people to tell me about it because I will go hold them accountable. Now I get to be dad and I get to say, Tell me if they're doing a good job, because if they're not, I will fix the problem. And the way that I fix the problem at this point is a lot of your business comes as referrals from me, because everybody who invests in Gary asks my opinion. And I don't take sponsorships. I never take anybody saying, hey, we want to pay you to recommend. Nope, sorry. I will use you. If you're good, then I'll recommend you. That's it. And if you suck, I will let people know that you suck. So it's up to you. And don't rely on yourself. Rely on the network. Rely on other people. You're only as strong as your team, man. Like, your team is everything. Real estate investing is not an individual sport. It's not like MMA. It's not like playing chess. It is like basketball or soccer. It is a team sport. You need the right people in the right positions.
Yeah, what I would tell a brand new investor is set up weekly communications, even if you have one unit. Right. I remember when we had 1 or 2 units, we had a call at 8:15 Friday mornings. And those calls might be 5 minutes, it might be 10 minutes. But it was me showing the property manager and showing the people doing work at our properties that I am not going to let anything slip, right? I treated them as part of my team, and I held them to that standard. And one of the rules that I quickly adopted is, you can screw up once, but not twice. And that's why, you guys have all heard my stories. I fired the first 5 property managers. Right? I had to find someone that would operate at my speed. And at the end of the day, it's my money. Yeah. And the last thing to say is that people are in the real estate business. They know how to sell, right? They're in the service business. So a lot of them can whisper sweet nothings in your ears and all of those things. Follow up, hold them accountable, ask questions, document, take pictures. Again, as Mike has shared, the technology today is so much better than it was 20 years ago. I have my contractors at the end of the week when they're supposed to get paid, they would do a recording of the work they did. And they would send that to me before they got paid. I would see what was going. And these are people I'd worked with for 50 projects. They just knew what had to happen. Right. So hold everybody accountable, communicate, over communicate. That's what I do.
Okay. So the second question I have, so I have I have stocks, and so that's enough to put on down payment. It's about 50K. I'm not sure. And this is in an investment account, not a retirement account. So I'm trying to figure out how to think about it. Like, I know this is future. I planned it for future money, future self. And so moving it from one asset to another, it's kind of scary, because it's one of those things that the mindset of this is future money. So I'm not sure how to kind of allocate that to kind of a down payment. What's your kind of thought process about kind of using money that you set aside for something like retirement or future things to use for rental investments?
Mike will probably have a more seasoned, experienced, and measured answer to this than I will. I have an IRA. I have a Roth IRA. I contribute $500 a month to it, or whatever the maximum is. I've been doing that for years. That was the first retirement venture that I ever had, back when I listened to Dave Ramsey, and I still consider myself a recovering Dave Ramsey addict. You're never cured. It's always just in remission. Just kidding, guys. But I have a Roth IRA, and for me, that's not my plan A. It's not my plan B. It's my plan C or D. It's a backup to my backups. I remember when I sat down with the financial planner and they explained to me, investing this much, you'll have this much in retirement. You can withdraw 4%. And I looked at the numbers and they were dismal. They were just sad. I mean, it's just tiny. This would not afford me the type of retirement or life that I wanted. And it was going to be 45 years down the road. And maybe I won't run out of money before I die. And I looked at what is considered the conventional wisdom around retirement planning, future money, as you put it. And to me, I just see it as the financial matrix. It's this lie that we all participate in and that we all tell ourselves when we say, yeah, I'm sure that $1 million that I set aside a cup of coffee for $1 million in 40 years, as if $1 million is going to have any purchasing power after inflation gets through with it in the next 40 years. It looks like a formula for being average, being a loser. And I don't mean any disrespect to anybody at all. And like I said, I still have one. It's just my plan D. I recognize that if I actually wanted to secure my financial future, I needed to find a better avenue. And the better avenue for me was real estate investing. And I found that through listening to a bunch of different people talk about it. Some of those, obviously Zuber's one of them. And so it became very easy for me to decide, all right, I'm going to focus all of my efforts and money on investing in real estate, because I think that this is a clearly superior method and vehicle for planning a financial future, getting to financial freedom, all the goals that I have for myself. Now, am I going to advise you cash out, liquidate your Roth IRA and your 401k, dump it all into real estate? I think that's only a decision that you can make. But I can tell you that's what Dion did. That's what Marco Shiro, the financial firefighter, did. That's what a lot of people have done. Maybe you take a percentage. Maybe you could buy stuff within a retirement account nowadays with self-directed ones. But I think that is actually more of a personal decision, and it comes down to what you're comfortable doing. And that's just different for every individual.
Yeah, when I think about that question, it sounded like this 50K is in a traditional account, so it's not a 401k, not an IRA.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, so when I look at this situation, this is just me, take it for what it's worth. Buying a rental property is still future money. It is trapped. It's trapped equity. It's not liquid like the 50K is sitting in Tesla stock or Palantir or whatever it's in. But it's still future money. In fact, one of the reasons I like real estate is it's illiquid, right? As Mike said earlier, insider trading works. You can find deals. I can create value, and I can't sell it on a moment's notice. One of the reasons I am a horrible stock trader is I'm emotional. I'll sell it just as quick as buy. That's why I don't do it. Real estate, it's locked up. It's illiquid. There are plenty of ways to get access to the equity if I need to. But to me, it's still future money. At least that's how I've chosen to look at my portfolio.
And kind of, I guess this is more of a tax question. Like it's going to be like 20% or something of that if I sell it for cash, like on tax.
Well, I don't know. It's 20% of the gain. So it's whatever your principal's not taxed.
Okay.
It's yeah, whatever that is. And then the beauty about real estate again is if let's just say you put the 50K in something and you want to go borrow against it later and get the 50K back, like I've done. I borrowed millions of dollars in equity over the years. That's tax zero. Debt has zero taxes.
For the record, I started investing in my Roth IRA when I was 23. So I've got 10 years of investing in a Roth IRA. And I've got 5 years investing in real estate, and my Roth IRA hasn't even made me $100,000, and I made $1 million in equity from real estate. So I know which one worked better for me, and I know which one pays me every month, and which one gives me the tax breaks, and which one got me on a show here so that I could compliment you on your FC Barcelona jersey and say Messi's still second to Ronaldo, but Ronaldinho's the GOAT.
Oh, you're missing out. This is.
Oh, I like it. Hey, you know what? He's good. You know, he's pretty good. He's a great.
He's okay. He's okay.
But I mean, but Ronaldo's Ronaldo.
Yes, he has a swagger. That's what I have to say about that. So my last question is, I'm at the beginning of my real estate investment journey. How are you guys kind of balancing the journey? I know Zuber's kind of towards the end of it, but how are you, Mike?
I can talk about the beginning. But go ahead. Mike goes first.
Did he just call you old, Zuber? That's two times in one show.
Twice.
Seasoned. Twice. What are you talking about?
Right.
Wisdom and season.
That's all right. I would not trade lives with almost anybody right now. I got a pretty good one. I'm cool. I'm all right.
He just came back from a river cruise, so you can't hate on that.
I'm doing good. How do I balance it? Well, you know, this is funny. I have this conversation all the time because I post an absurd amount on Instagram and on YouTube, and I'm a full-time police officer, full-time SWAT officer. So I get called out for things like I did yesterday. We served a search warrant on a murder suspect. I'm a full-time single father with full custody of my son. The other parent isn't in the picture at all. We haven't seen her in years. I'm a very, very busy person. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I don't want a different type of life. Me personally, I enjoy that. This is more of a philosophical answer. I think people talk about, oh yeah, I just want to be happy. For me, happiness isn't a permanent state of mind. It's not something like, oh, I achieved happiness and now I'm happy forever. For me, the happiness comes from the journey. It's the struggle. It's not the destination. It's the climb up the mountain. I love the process. And so I don't think about things like balance. I just think about these goals that I have to attack, that I have to accomplish. And I don't sleep very much. I slept like 3 hours last night because I decided to stay up late, hang out with my little brother and play some chess with him. And I got up for an interview early, and then I'm doing this, and I got another call at noon, and I'm going to go to the gym later. I just like to work. Me personally, that's what I like to do. I know other people are different. Not everybody has the same mentality, but when I don't think about balance. I just think about my goals and what I got to do and how I'm going to do it.
Yeah, the first 5 years, no balance. I mean, that's the key. Once I locked in on Fresno, California, it was looking at deals, networking, following up, running the books. There was no balance. There was no balance. I would work 60 to 70 hours a week, making as much money as I can selling software. And I would find every waking minute to do something in my real estate, send an email, send a text, ask for a reference, do some research. I would not accept failure. I didn't stop. I frankly didn't stop. It's just who I am for 15 years. I'm certainly slowed down now, no question. But for 15 years, good luck keeping up. And that's how I took the challenge. It's like, nobody's going to outwork me. Nobody. For the first 3 years, I didn't want anybody buying a great deal in Mayfair in Fresno unless I took a shot at it. That's my attitude. I would not accept defeat. I just wouldn't accept it. That's why I look every day. Make sense?
So, yeah.
go ahead.
So how did you, like, both your wife and your daughter, like, how did you kind of
my daughter probably never understood, because it was before she got up or when she was in bed. I did a lot during my meetings at work or on airplanes or on car rides, or you just find a ways to carve out 5 to 10 minutes. So she probably never saw it. My wife and I, Olivia, communicated probably every day for the first couple of years, what I was seeing, what I was doing, what we were going to offer on, what happened on the last ones. We would talk usually at night. Olivia's a night person. I'm a morning person. So I had to lean towards her thing. Communicate. And for me, because I had already done, like, the beauty about how Olivia is a night person, and I could do in 15 minutes what I'd done that day. And I don't know about you, but it always helped me repeating out loud to someone else what I had done, as opposed to just letting it rattle around in my head, because you can confuse yourself. Telling Olivia, hey, there were 7 new listings, 2 of them are overpriced, 3 are this, 3 are that. We're going to take a shot at this one. That was helpful for me. It kind of bookended my day. And then I would get up again at 5 a.m. and start it over.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds like a good approach, to just to like unwind with the data that you have and then kind of reset every day. Yeah.
It worked really well for it. And again, we did it every day for at least 3 years.
Thank you.
Very cool. All right. John, your hand was up next. Amy will be after you. John. John, are you there? If not, we'll go to Amy first and we'll see if John comes back. Amy, you want to go?
Yes, yeah, sounds good. So, hi, Mike.
Hey.
Good to see you on screen again. So yeah, I have 2 questions for you. The first one is, so like recently on the news, there's, like Michael also talks about too, like how interest rates are gonna forecasted to be coming down, and like he was sharing for California at least that like houses that were kind of sitting on a sideline are getting hotter or getting more traction. And so I don't know, in environment like Gary, if that is kind of what you're feeling too, because I know you mainly buy with creative financing, so you don't typically use banks, but I'm just wondering if even for you in that market with that price point, if you're feeling any differences in terms of like how hot the market is, or just any change in temperature.
You know, the interest rates affect houses at such a lower price point like that differently.
Mhm.
You know,
Right.
the difference between a 5 and 7% interest rate on a $50,000 house might be $50 a month. And
Mhm.
so there's not really as much of a major change. Now, there was a change when we went from 3% to 7%, but going from 8 to 7.5 or 7 to 7.75, I'm really not noticing any major changes in inventory or houses staying on the market longer, coming off the market quicker, at least not in that specific area. But again, that's going to be totally different, different parts of the country.
Let me add a little twist for Amy, because again, your price point, in order to get the best financing in Gary, it has to be almost turnkey, right? A lot of these problem properties won't qualify for first-time homebuyer programs. Is that true?
That is correct. Yes. If you're going to go traditional financing through a bank, it's going to have to be darn near turnkey, very minor.
Dialed in. Yeah.
Mhm. Okay. Yeah, I was wondering because like you said, because the price there is way cheaper, so I wasn't sure if that was more sensitive or not. Okay. And then the second question I feel like is kind of the elephant in the room, but if like we want to learn more about Gary, like how can we use you as a resource to do so?
Yeah, I mean, I tell this to everybody. You're more than welcome to send me a DM. Amy, we've chatted many times. I met you at Zuber's event that he had in November in Fresno. And I always make myself accessible to people. Amy and I we went out to like lunch that day or something like that. We hung out and we chatted and all that cool stuff. So anybody who's interested in learning specifically about Gary or Northwest Indiana, I'm always happy to chat. Zuber had one of these types of these like boot camp types things probably 6 months ago. Brian Adamson and I were on it back on his YouTube channel. And he called me afterwards and he goes, "Young man, you need to make a course." There's a lot of people that are very interested. The Lumberjacks told me, Dion's told me, I've been asked countless times, "Are you going to make a course? Will you please make a course, how to invest at a distance?" And it's coming. I'm aiming for February is when I'm hoping that it's going to be done. Do you have to buy it to learn from me? No, I talk to everybody anyways. But I think that at this point, I have a certain skill set and knowledge. A lot of people are interested in it. And I'm going to actually go out there and take the advice from people like Mike, who have been harping on me for a while about it. All right, you're right, Mike. You're right, as usual. I'll do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
In short,
Yeah,
Amy, DM him on Instagram and he will help you.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, thanks for all your help, both of you two.
Very, very welcome. Hey, John, let's try to go back to you. Oh, there he is. Hi, John. I see John. Oh, there we go. How you doing, John?
Can you hear me?
I can. How are you?
Excellent. Good morning, Mike and everyone else. I'm renting right now. I'm approved at 5% conventional for a duplex here in Gainesville, Florida.
Nice.
I will need some help from the seller, but not a lot. And this is a house hack. So Mike, Millennial Mike, how ready were you when you bought your first one?
Ooh,
that's a great question.
Or were you ready?
Yeah, is anybody ever ready? I mean, you get as ready as you can, but you just don't know what you don't know. It's one of my favorite sayings. You don't know what you don't know.
Quick question, Mike, just to twist this a little bit. When you bought your duplex in Seattle, was the other side rented or was it vacant? I don't remember.
It was currently rented out to a tenant. And I was able to get, the rent estoppel showed they were paying $1,600 a month. They paid for the last 6 months. I had the lease. But how ready are you ever? You do your best to learn as much as you can, to study what other people have done, and then you take your shot. And if you've read Mike's book, which I highly recommend people, if you haven't read it, your first property could be the one where they pay their first month's rent and then they never pay it again. Then they have a hammer party and they get divorced and it's just a nightmare. That's what happened to Mike. Or your first property could be like me, which is where I went from one long-term tenant to the next for the first 5 years without one single missed payment ever. I had one repair in 5 years. It was a water heater. Like, it could be a grand slam and it could absolutely suck. And it's not necessarily going to be anything you did right or wrong. So you just have to, I always say, plan for the worst, expect the worst, pray for the best, and then deal with whatever comes your way.
Okay. And I guess as a follow-up, from a house hack perspective and an analysis, when I analyze, do I need to worry about setting aside my percentage for vacancy and repair? Or could I look at the repair while I live there as if I would have the same repair if I was actually just in my own house?
This is actually a really good question. And Dion and I talk about this all the time. He actually gives a slightly different answer than I do on this one. And I recommend you watch from him, or you check out what he says, because he says when you analyze your house hack deal, you should analyze it as if both sides were rented out. Does the property make sense? You know, even though you're going to live in one side, you run your numbers as if both sides were rented. And I think that makes a lot of sense, because eventually his goal has always been to turn it into a rental property anyways and move out in a year or two. So why wouldn't you do that? I approach it slightly differently. I was renting similar to you. You're in Florida. I don't know what you're paying, but I was paying about $2,000 a month. Very expensive. Certainly was for me at the time. It didn't, you know, I wasn't making a ton of money. $2,000 a month. And I looked at, if I get into this house hack with what the tenant's going to pay, what my roommate's going to pay, what the payment is, I'm going to go from paying $2,000 a month to only paying $500 a month in rent. That's a $1,500 a month savings. Would this property have met the metrics necessary to be a great deal? First of all, I didn't even know Zuber at the time, so I wasn't even thinking in terms of yield. I wasn't thinking in terms of average, good, or great deals. Would it have met the metrics at the time? I guess I'm not sure, because I wasn't calculating everything in them, but it certainly wouldn't meet my metrics now, given what I aim for now. But what it did for me was allow me to get an extra $1,500 in my pocket every single month, which increased my ability to save, cut my living expenses, and then I was able to buy more. And then the unintended side effect was my equity position went up $350,000 over the next 4 years. It went from a $450,000 duplex to an $800,000 duplex because of COVID. So you can choose however you want to analyze the deal. You absolutely should have reserves set aside to handle problems. I don't know how old your house is. Mine was built in 97. It was only like 25 years old when I got it, something like that, 21 years old. If yours is older or newer, maybe you need less in reserves for those repairs, but you definitely want reserves. But ultimately, I think it's going to come down to whatever works best for you. And for me, I just try to tell people, if you can cut your rent by 75%, that's a lot of extra money in your pocket to build up reserves. Certainly was for me.
Yeah, that's it. Just to, you know, throw color on it. This is why I always tell you one of my financial regrets was not house hacking a fourplex, because I was paying rent for something. I could have easily bought something and had lower and then stack that cash. So I look at it the same way you do, Mike.
In my circumstance, it's actually going to be the opposite, because I'm paying below market rate rent. So my rent would actually go up to even break even on the mortgage. Hence why I'm asking if I could fudge while I live there and not necessarily save for vacancy, because I know I'll pay my rent. And
yeah, I would certainly not include the reserves like vacancy for your half the unit, because you're going to be living there, right? That's a guaranteed piece. So I would definitely not let the spreadsheet math kind of fool you with that calculation.
And so is your goal, hey, I want to buy real estate and I want to get in with a 5% down loan, but that means I have to live in it so I don't violate the mortgage terms. So that's why you're going to move into it instead of just immediately put a tenant in there?
In my market, I need to house hack so I own the roof over my head.
Right.
Realistically, I probably will actually look down the road to invest elsewhere, or maybe do one more house hack here. But then after that, I will move out of state, as it were. I'm also mid-50s. So in about 7 or 8 years, I'll be looking to invest and retire somewhere else, not in Florida. So, you know, the idea is like, get the first house hack, maybe get into a second one, but after that, I'm going to be elsewhere. But in the meantime, I've got to get in the game.
Yeah.
I would say if you weren't moving into this property, if there was a tenant that was going to be in there, does the deal cash flow make sense if you run the numbers at that rate?
Some of the duplexes will work even with me in there.
Okay. Well,
it's just a matter of I'm not then saving very much money for the next deal. Right. So I may have to be in the duplex for 3 years to have enough down payment for the next one.
There's nothing wrong with 3 years. There's, you know, a lot of people get in the game and it's 2 or 3 years before they can save up for the next one. It will eventually, like when you get the next one, the next time frame will be less than 3 years, because you'll have the income snowball. But yeah, it's not uncommon for there to be a gap of years between 1 and 2.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, very, very cool. Amy, I think you already asked your question, so we'll go to Jason next. And okay, Jason.
Sure, thank you. So I see I have a property in my crosshairs that is cash flowing day one at current rates.
Okay.
It's a duplex with an ADU in the back.
So it's
Now,
technically 3 units.
3 units?
technically 3 units, but
Nice.
ADU in the back is unpermitted as far as I know.
Okay.
I don't know if either of you have had experiences purchasing a property with unpermitted things. How would you approach this? Your general thoughts?
I'll let Zuber go ahead and answer that.
Yeah, so I've bought plenty of properties in Fresno, California that have had unpermitted structures in the back or had garage conversions that are unpermitted. There are, let's just call it degrees of unpermitted, right? There was building standards and whatnot that didn't exist that now exist. So I remember one property on Grant that I purchased that had unpermitted unit in the back, but it was actually recognized by the city. So in that case, we ended up having to pay for the city inspectors to come out, review the property, and had to make some changes, and then it became permitted. It has become easier in California thanks to the new ADU rules, but I was doing this before those existed. I did buy a unit that had a unsafe garage conversion. I ripped it out. I would not feel good having somebody live there. But there are some
report that it was considered unsafe, or when you brought your inspector in.
I actually had a GC with me and we walked through it in that example. It was very obvious. It wasn't insulated. The egress wasn't to size. I mean, there was just so many things wrong with it. It's like, I wouldn't let my dog live here, let alone a human being. But I had to rip it out. I had to rip everything out. I had to rip out plumbing. I had to rip out some wiring. It was a whole deal. But I have plenty of units. The one thing I will tell you, like, I've bought plenty of houses. It's technically 2 houses on one lot, but they only have 1 electric meter. For 10 years, I tried to fight the battle of, I get the electric bill. I'm going to bill this tenant that much and that tenant this much based on unit size, based on occupancy size, based on all these other nonsense. It never works. So what I have done the last 10 years, and I have dozens of these, probably a dozen, maybe 13 of these 2 house structures, I now rent them to multi-generational families. One family, 1 lease. So I get a little bit less total, but I remove the electricity headache and I actually net more. I will never rent a property that has 1 meter to 2 people. It is just a disaster waiting to happen. So, but I will rent mom in the front, grandma in the back, daughter in the front, mom in the back, whatever. Multi-generational living is a big, big deal. So I do that all the time now. And it works out well. They love it. So that's what I do.
And do you advertise both units like that? Like, hey, I have 2
multi-generational living. Absolutely. 2 structures. Absolutely. Yes.
Gotcha.
That makes sense, Jason?
Yeah, it does make sense. I have one more question.
Please go ahead. Yeah. Nobody else's hand up. So one more question and then we'll let Mike wrap up for our 10 o'clock finish.
Perfect. So my question was around seller financing. I know right now you've been talking about a lot on your channel, generally speaking, and Mike, I hear that that's how you like to structure your deals. How do you walk me through your approach, Mike, as far as seller financing? Like, how many touch points do you do? What does the initial contact look like? Are you telling it, hey, I want the property here, the terms I'm offering straight up, or how do you approach seller financing?
Yeah, that's a great question. So if I'm looking on the MLS, this is something I recommend that everybody does. There is no one agent like Zuber talked about earlier. When I'm looking on realtor.com and I see a property I like, I just call the listing agent directly. This forces me to network with more people, get on their radar, ask them if they have other listing, ask them if they have anything coming up, get a gauge for where they're at in terms of why it's been on the market for so long. And when I'm talking to the listing agent, I just say, hey, is the owner willing to carry a note on this? Is the owner willing to carry any paper on this? Are they willing to offer any type of owner financing? And then we just take the conversation from there. Oh, no, they're not interested. Or sometimes they are. And sometimes we get to the point where, okay, well, make me an offer. All right, well, here's the terms I like. And sometimes they don't respond. Sometimes they do. You just follow it as long as you can until you either close or the deal goes away. When it comes to speaking directly to owners, that's the best thing that you can do, but it's just very, very hard, because if you're looking on realtor.com, you're dealing with agents. They don't want you to know the owner at all because they don't want to get cut out of the deal. So understandable. They want to get paid. Absolutely. Even though you wouldn't cut them out of the deal, you would never do that. They don't trust you. They don't know you. They just want to take care of themselves. I get it. One of the most underrated ways that I'm trying to teach people on how to find seller financing deals right now that I haven't heard anybody talk about is using wholesalers. So a wholesaler is already papering a market with, we want to buy your house fast with cash. And now they want to buy it 50 cents on the dollar. Buyers are becoming more and more educated because you can go on Zillow and realtor.com and get an extremely accurate report of how valuable your house is, right? It's amazing. So it's harder and harder for these wholesalers to pull off a 50% off on the property. It still does happen. They still talk to a lot of people, especially in markets like mine where people don't even live in that house anymore. They just want to get rid of it. You can find houses like that. A lot of people are just looking, death, divorce, and depressed about the area you live in happens all the time. So you can get people who want to sell quickly, get out of it fast, and move on. And so what I'm now telling wholesalers I speak with is, hey, if you get somebody, you make an all cash offer, they don't like it, make them a seller financing offer. This is how I got my last deal. This is a seller finance deal that the wholesaler negotiated on my behalf. My house is, they want it for 100,000. The wholesaler's offering 50. They tell them no. Okay, well, offer them 75, but offer it on terms. And then we'll come to whatever the terms are. Now they're getting a lot closer to their sale price. They're not feeling as bad about it. So it's just an extra tool for the wholesaler to have in their belt. And they're the ones already paying to market and advertise in the area and directly speaking to the owners. And it still allows them to get their wholesale fee paid, because part of your down payment will be their fee paid. Then you're going to pay something to the owner and then finance the rest of it. So if you can educate wholesalers and develop friendships with them and have them advocate for seller financing as an alternative, that is a better way of getting seller finance opportunities brought to you. There's so few of them out there. You have to talk to so many people that it really does come down to numbers. But I have found that wholesalers are already positioned, and there's like a higher percentage of them coming up with possible, they're interested in talking about it than in any other avenue.
Nice.
Mike, can I interject something about seller financing?
Sure.
As a broker,
Mhm.
I would caution any of you guys out there about, if you're wanting to make an offer to a seller on seller financing, make sure you put it in writing. Don't ask the listing agent, is your client interested in seller financing? I'll tell you why. Agents will lie to you.
Mm-hmm.
They will. They're lazy. Or they'll even say, well, if you say, well, go ask your seller, they'll say, okay. And they'll get back with you and they'll say, no, he's not interested.
Nope. Yeah.
They didn't ask them.
Right.
Put it in writing, put in the offer in writing that you want seller financing. And that forces the agent to go to the seller. They have to put the offer to the seller. And then the seller has to either accept, reject, or counter.
Perfect. That's great advice. The last thing I'll say about seller financing is the seller has to be in a position to say yes. And typically speaking, that means they have to have equity. So one of the softball questions I often ask, and again, there's actually tools now. There's a tool called PropStream that I use and my team uses, that you can actually go look up the mortgage and the purchase date and things of that nature. So there are tools to help with this. But yeah, is there a loan on the property? Those kinds of things. But you're absolutely right. Write an offer. It's a standard offer. It's not illegal. I can't tell you how many agents told me they thought seller financing was illegal. It's like, have you read the car form? It's like on the form. So anyways, thank you, Catherine. All right, we're going to try to sneak in one more question from Steve. He just raised his hand and we'll try to wrap it up.
Yep. Thanks, Mike, for getting me under the wire there. Melinda, Mike, appreciate you being on here as well. So I moved from California to Texas. We kept our home in California. We have a tenant in there now. Good tenant. I actually was able to get rid of my property manager. I have boots on the ground family great neighbors in the neighborhood. So we checked all the boxes there. They're already talking about a renewal of multiple years. Do you, again, a good tenant, cash flow is good. The variable, and I already talked to my insurance agent, is insurance, right? It's going up, right? So she gave me ballpark of where we're at. And I already mentioned that to them and they're fine with that. But when we're talking about multi-year deals, do you bake that in there too? Or kind of how do you handle it? And then I have another question after that. That's my first one.
I'll let Zuber answer this because I've never signed a lease for over 12 months.
Okay.
Yeah. You can definitely do 2-year leases. I've done them on occasion, but I always include a rent up on the second year.
Okay. That was my other thing. I already told them there's probably going to be an increase based on talking to my agent. They were fine with it, but it's the year 2 that I was concerned about.
I would include a rent up. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And then second question is, again, we're in Texas. Initially, my thought was investing where we're at, and I have continued to search the market and have actually kind of looked at different areas of the North Texas area. And the problem here, again, variable, and Mike, you talked about it before, is property taxes.
Every year, baby.
Right. So we did pass a law recently where, as a homeowner, my property taxes did go down. Okay,
right.
Good for me. But that is not happening as an investor.
Correct.
So now I'm at the point where I'm starting to look. Oklahoma is 2 hours away.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where but I don't want to get off the, hey, have I done enough work? Have I put in enough time to say, hey, this isn't going to work? But the property tax thing, no matter where you are in this state, is going to be an issue.
My whole reason for not going to Texas in 2006 and 7, the state could F me at a moment's notice. Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
Well, because California treats you so well, right, Mike?
Prop 13, baby. Prop 13.
Yeah, that's about the only thing they do well.
Yeah, the Prop 13 is amazing. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I agree there. So would you spend a little more time and because I've looked at other areas.
Yeah,
at first it was within a certain range, and now I'm kind of like, okay, let's look at our other areas before I just say, hey, forget it altogether.
What I would tell you to do is really what we talked about, I think day 1 or day 2, is I'm trying to teach you the skill, Steve. So typically learning the skill of a buy box and average and all of that is easiest done local, because you can drive by, you can walk properties, you can do all of this. Like when I went to Fresno, if I had not spent a year in the Bay Area, I probably never get started in Fresno. But that year that I spent in the Bay Area allowed me to learn Fresno that much faster. So any effort, even if you never buy in Texas, I think it's just easier to do the 90 days or 6 months of work here to get the skill, to get the golf swing. And then you can take the golf swing anywhere you want. Okay. It's hard to do both. It's hard to go to a brand new area without knowing the skill, in my opinion.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. One last quick question here. Talking about my rental in California. So we're LA area, like 28 miles outside of downtown Los Angeles. You talked about reserves. I know in the past you said around $5,000. My thought was just for a comfort level, 10.
But what's the price point? It's like $500,000 or what are we talking?
For my price point of my house there?
Yeah, just what's the value? Sorry.
About $850.
Yeah, I would probably do 10. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at before I start taking any of the and I've done the math. It's probably somewhere around May of next year when I'll hit that number.
Yeah, just put it away until then. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
All right, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for doing this. Mike, you want to wrap us up in a minute or so? Close us out.
Sure. Guys, I really appreciate you being here. I know that for a lot of you, you're looking at getting that first property. Maybe you're looking at getting the next property. It does seem a little bit daunting. I remember when I was sitting in your seat and I was in your position and I was, wondering how I was going to make it happen. I have the unique ability of being able to go back on my YouTube channel and watch videos of me because I started filming 6 months before I got my first rental. And it's me filming myself, calling agent after agent. Nobody picks up their phone. Real estate agents, no offense, Catherine, you're lovely. But sometimes you guys don't answer the freaking phones. It's annoying. And I get to go back and I get to watch that experience. It's amazing to see how far I've come, how much has changed, how much I've learned, how much more educated I am on the subject now than I was then. At the end of the day, you guys are doing the right thing. You've invested in yourselves. You found a reliable, trustworthy, honest, hardworking, good person who genuinely cares about you and your success in Zuber. I hope as many of you can come to the event as possible. If you're not there, get the online virtual version of it, because the information that you hear from the people that Mike has put in his network of individuals he allows you guys to learn from, that knowledge is invaluable. He vets people very strictly. He's only bringing you the best people because we want to differentiate the message that we put out from people like Bigger Pockets. We don't care about selling courses and boot camps. We want to see you get number one. If you get number one, you'll probably get number two. That's how you win. Stick with it. Stay positive. Reach out to me if you have any questions. I'm always happy to help, always happy to chat. And Mike, as always, thank you so much for your years of mentorship and for inviting me to talk today.
Mike, just round this up. I remember our first conversation. I remember the Facebook post with you with the key. To see what you've done in 5 years, to see you become a millionaire because you've done the work you've done. Do you know how many people I've told to learn seller financing and network that have done nothing? You're the exact opposite of that, and you deserve everything. So, folks, take care of yourself. That is day 8. Day 9 will be next Sunday, 8 to 10, where we go back to your spreadsheets. I hope to see you there. Later.
Bye.